Okay, it is 8 a.m. on the dot. Oh, 8:01. I'm late. This is the Dewey 24-hour readathon. So I just finished the Reading Rush readathon. I did a full vlog for that. It's one of my longest ones in a while, and it took a lot of work. So I'm not in the mood to do another one anytime soon. So this isn't going to be a vlog. Instead, it's going to be more like a challenge video. This is my first Dewey's 24-hour readathon, and as it turns out, the creator's last take at it. I'm really excited to be participating in it. So my goal for this is simple. Read literally as much as I can. Originally, I had hoped to treat this as a way to read more books this month on top of my regular TBR, but we're down to 1 week left, and I have 4 books to read. 3 books that I'm also in the middle of on top of that. It's not something I want to stress about. So instead, I'm going to use this as an outlet to get through some of those. And if I make progress on that, well, there's room to read another book. But enough about my logistics. As much as I love talking about it, I guess I should just start reading, right? I do have a rule for myself. Absolutely no TV, no podcast, no YouTube. I can only read or sit and do nothing or talk on the phone. So there's an exception there. I have a monthly book club meeting at 1, I think it is, maybe 1:30 p.m. And we're doing a wrap up for the reading of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I'm about 2/3 through this, have less than 2 hours left. I'm going to start by trying to get through a bit more of the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingslover. That'll take just under 3 hours. We're looking at about 5 hours from these 2 looks. I'm going to push through the Poisonwood Bible. Okay, it is 2:30. It's 2:40, almost 2:45. I finished Station 11. I've read 280 pages. Station 11, I've read it before, read it again. I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 stars. I really like it. I reread it for a book club. I actually just spent the last hour and a half with them talking about this book. So it's plenty to talk about. And I do really like this. I really love Emily St. John Mandel's writing, and I love her ability to craft characters. But I was really hoping and expecting this to be better the second go around than the first go around. I was really sure that this time, after I'm familiar with the characters, I'm gonna be able to follow along in a way that ensures that I love this as much as everybody else. And I don't feel weird criticizing it because I'm still giving it 4 stars. But overall, I feel like the most interesting part about this is, one, her writing, but in the plot, it's just the fact that it's set in a pandemic. Having read her newest novel, I feel like what the draw of her books are the way in which she writes her characters and the way in which she interweaves them and the way she can craft a storyline around them. And the story isn't really a story, it's just them living in a pandemic. Here, we can relate, not just because we're in a pandemic right now, but because it's so real, how real like it could happen. This could be us having to go through these different actions. And for that sense, it's just really compelling in that way. But on its own, I just don't think the plot is the best thing in the world. The major conflict, the climax, which I talked about with my friends, feels kind of rushed, and it really is just a matter of structure and a narrative choice. Still a solidly enjoyable book and a great experience overall. I have about an hour left of the Station Bible, the Poisonwood Bible. I am really enjoying it. This is the second historical fiction book that I'm reading this month. In the first book, I haven't actually finished. I was expecting a similar situation here. I'm just really happy with the story for a number of reasons. One, the writing is really inviting. It's easy to get into, it's easy to follow along. We're reading this story of this family this missionary family doing missionary work in the Congo, in Africa. One reason it works so well is that we're jumping between 5 different perspectives, the mother and her 4 daughters. Because of that, the story is constantly moving. Even if it's the same story, the different perspectives keep things really lively. I find the different perspectives and the story itself really compelling and engaging. I do think part of it is that I can sort of relate to the characters and the situation. This is a Southern Baptist family going to do this. I've never done missionary work outside of the country. When I was younger, I was very religious. I was even a Baptist in my middle to high school time. I know from experience there are definitely a lot of people like this, some very pious individuals who are very self-righteous, think very highly of themselves. This isn't everybody. Not all Christians are like this. Not even all Southern Christians are like this, but there are definitely a good bit of them. And I think that's really apparent in the father in this story. I was really able to appreciate the criticisms that she has in this book, the reality of these characters. She doesn't have a religious background from my understanding. Her father was a doctor who carried her there during her childhood to the Congo. So she has experience in the Congo. I think it's the fact that it's a Georgian family who have a very similar background to that I have, who think in a way that is very consistent with what I'm used to as someone who grew up in that area and grew up as a Christian myself. And for that reason, it was really interesting hearing the different perspectives, because not everyone thinks like their father. I can really enjoy the sort of deluded side of some of them versus the very critical side of others. It's just a very great dynamic of characters, and I'm really loving it. It's a really long book, yet it's covering a huge span of time. I was surprised at how much it moved from moment to moment, even if what's happening isn't always the most action-packed thing in the world. Call it for now, and I will give you my closing thoughts of the Poisonwood Bible right after this. Hello, 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 baby, you called. It's 4 o'clock. So we're looking at 8 hours right now that I've had. I've read just shy of 350 pages. That's about what? The length of a book. So you could say I've read the equivalent of 1 book, even though I finished 2. That could be better. I mean, a 300-page book is actually going to be like a 5-hour audiobook. That said, I talked to my dad on the phone because it was his birthday and I had the book club meeting. But I really want to crack down and get more done. I'm going to finish, hopefully, 2 more books. Starters, though, I did finish the Poisonwood Bible. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This came very close, though, to getting 4.5. I was really debating there, but I've decided if I'm not certain, this is something that should be definitely lower than higher. And everything I said still applies. I really like this book. I love the characters. I could really connect to it. I didn't mention before, but I mean, I definitely cried. I shed a tear at one point. And part of that, though, isn't necessarily for them. It's more my ability to think about my life as it compares to theirs, since we're so similar. It's really cool reading these people from Georgia, reading about them, really being able to understand them. I've read so many historical fictions lately, I've read several of late, and often I have troubles with characters, and I still have troubles here. I had to make some notes, but I found this method of having each of them have their own perspective really helpful. At the beginning of each chapter, the narrator would say the name of the person and they would go. And because I was listening at 2.5 speed, it was really hard sometimes to realize, oh, this is change. And I would get into it and I would not realize when a new section. But I would very soon realize that because these characters, their perspectives are so distinctly different, which makes a really interesting story. I also loved the time span this covered. I thought this was going to be a much more concise book, but it was very much a complete narrative of their life. I really like this book because it talks about circumstance. Basically, sometimes you can't help what happens to you, and I think part of what we see here, some of the developments that take place with these characters, I'm not convinced it would have happened if they didn't have to go through the things they did. So it's this question of how do you break free of what can be like a very toxic system, and this wife was in a very toxic system. The kids were. The father was very abusive, and while not every religious person is abusive, I do think his personality is fairly common in the South. And while everyone goes as crazy as he does in this book, I think part of that, though, is also circumstance. The story was fantastic. The character is fantastic. Really good. This has a lot of similarities to The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad and Things Fall Apart. It's really interesting to think about this perspective, this setting, from this different perspective. And it's going to be very present in my mind when I'm rereading those 2 books, which I haven't read in like a decade. Love it, love it. Now I'm going to read The Majesty of Law by Sandra Day O'Connor. She was the first Supreme Court Justice woman to ever be appointed. It took me about 4 hours, so we're looking at 8 p.m., probably 9 p.m. realistically. I bought this book along with another Supreme Court Justice memoir like 5 years ago. At the time I wanted to read it. I do want to read it now. Like in my current mindset, would I have picked this book up, like to buy, above all the others? No, I definitely wouldn't. I think I said that in my TBR. But because I have bought it, it isn't a book that I want to get rid of. It's a book that I want to read because it's on my shelf. So in that note, it will be one of my older TBR books. Okay, it is almost 11 o'clock now. It's 10:55. I finished reading Out of Order by Sandra Day O'Connor at about 9:30. I just took a nap, a little over an hour. Honestly, I thought I might be going to sleep. Lucky for me, I can't go to sleep this early anymore. Now I'm rested for a good while. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like that sounds really bad when I say that. It was good. I enjoyed reading it, but it was really nothing special. It's essentially a history, what basically could be a high school level history review of the Supreme Court and a few other things. It's not very focused. It starts off with a brief introduction of of her, right? But that's very brief. And then we get a history of the Supreme Court, and then we talk about the women's suffrage movement. All in all, it was fine. It was interesting as someone who enjoys that. But I mean, it's not much depth here. It's not much critical analysis, more like presentation of facts, which feels weird to be getting that from her. It's like, I know you'll buy my book, so I'm just going to sell you these facts that are pretty much already out there. Someone who really has no background for the Supreme Court, I found the stories interesting. It's new to me. I can't imagine people who know about the history find anything of substance from this. So I actually own another book by her. I really don't think I'm going to read it. Apparently it's just more stories from the Supreme Court, which feels weird considering this is the history of the Supreme Court. There needs to be more focus in the narrative here. It's like, I need a book of this length, therefore let me cover whatever topics need to be covered. Again, the topics aren't bad. They just are oddly forced together. So it's technically one full book read, but we're looking at 700 pages. I have some graphic novels that I got on NetGalley a while back that I want to read for this. My goal is to read as many of those as possible. Okay, I read Distant Stars. It is comic 3 or book 3 in the Life on Earth trilogy. It is a graphic novel series. I've never read the first 2. I got this because I requested a bunch of graphic novels on NetGalley in hopes that they would be easy reads to bump up my stats on NetGalley. I got so many of them that it's actually more daunting than anything. I'm giving this 3 out of 5 stars. The story was interesting. It was hard to figure out what was going on without context of the previous story. I wasn't sure how much of it was supposed to be inferred versus known already. But all in all, I got the gist of what was happening. I thought it was mildly interesting. I don't see myself loving it even if I had read the first 2, just because it is so abstract. The art, storytelling. It's about 12 a.m. As I say that was about 275 comic pages, but again, very easy to flip through. Now I'm going to move on to Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. It's a horror graphic novel, not meant for kids. I haven't read a lot of graphic novels. Those that I have read are mostly been adaptations. So this is like one of my first actual graphic novels for the sake of just reading a graphic novel. My goal here is to read at least 3 graphic novels. I'm hoping like 5 or more before this is all over. It's 2 a.m. I finished Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. It was great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is one of the few comics or graphic novels I've read. If it's a collection of comics, does that count as a graphic novel? Are those distinctly different? In either case, I love this story. It was really creepy, really unnerving. There were parts of the story that had been a little overdone, not necessarily in the story itself, but like in the genre of horror. But there were other parts that were really creative, and I thought the art was really fun. It was graphic, yet it lacked a level of realism to be too graphic. One thing I really liked about it was that this one, after the first, I think, 2 pages, I immediately thought to myself, God, I don't want this to end, because I was really enjoying it. I was very happy because of that. And I'm hoping the next one I read will be like that. I'm thinking I'm going to read A Walk Through Hell. This is a collected volumes of the complete series, as it's defined. Nearly 300 pages long. I don't see myself reading anymore after this, but I'm really hoping to finish this one before I go to sleep. It's 3 a.m. I'm tired. I could keep reading, but I feel like I would enjoy this more if I just postpone it. I don't think I'm going to wake up before this is over at 8 a.m. If I do, I'll keep reading. Right now I've read 50 of the 290 pages, so unlikely I'm going to finish it for this vlog. So even if I don't finish this, you can expect a review of this, hopefully sometime next month. My initial reactions are good. It's definitely got a higher level of realism. Like, the writing feels more original. It's a horror story about these 2 detectives investigating something demonic, I think. It feels like a well-developed plot. It's very dense. There's an investigation going on in flashbacks while we explore this sort of demonic situation going on now, and I don't quite understand how they connect. But I'm excited to be reading this. I'm just tired right now, so I know I sound very monotone. This is a full collection of all the volumes, so I was really excited to be granted this arc. It's like a $50 graphic novel, and it's a great opportunity to be able to read all of them at once. So I am going to try and finish this tomorrow. You'll probably not get to hear me talk about it again for this video. Okay, it's Sunday. The readathon is over. I didn't get any more reading done this morning. In fact, I slept in, got a good amount of sleep. But let's wrap this up. The one book I actually finished was Sandra Day O'Connor's The Majesty of Law. I gave this, I think, 3 stars. I already talked about it. It was fine, kind of a remedial review, but something I don't know much about. Then on top of that, I finished 2 novels that I'd already started, that is Station 11 and the Poisonwood Bible, both of which I really liked. And then I read 2 comics. One is Something's Killing the Children, Volume 1, which I really liked. It was a lot of fun. Gave that 4 out of 5 stars. My biggest complaint there was just that some of these story aspects were kind of cliche. Walking Through Hell, which I started at the end of this, but I did not finish before last night. I am 80% through it now, but I'm going to talk about that once I finish it. Now, the other ones I read were Distant Stars, I think, which is book 3 of a trilogy. I think I gave it 3 stars. It was fine. I honestly only read it because I got it off of NetGalley. I probably shouldn't have requested it, and I feel kind of bad now because it wasn't for me. Now, just to give you some numbers, 1 book, 2 comics, finished 2 books I already started. Like, I read 1,155 pages total. Of that, 700 pages were from a regular novel via audiobook, and the rest, 455 pages, were from comics that I read visually, obviously, on e-arcs. All in all, I'm sad to say, I don't feel very accomplished by this readathon. I'm not even sure if this video is going to get posted. Like, I feel like there's not much to see here, there's not much to talk about. I'm probably going to do it anyways just because I do review these books, which was fun. I think I needed a more firm goal. I think I shouldn't have come in with 2 books unfinished, or I should have put them on hold probably, so I could allow myself more of a strict thing to work towards. It feels like my everyday routine. And so I think if I ever do this again, like a 24-hour readathon, I need something stricter. Now, I did set some rules for myself. No YouTube, no Netflix, no TikTok. Basically any kind of like just lazy media consumption. That said, I was on Facebook a bit. I should have set a rule for that, but I didn't. And in that sense, it did work really well. I wanted to watch YouTube several times, and I definitely wanted to watch TikTok several times, so I resisted that urge. That was a fun challenge for myself, make myself focus on reading. But I would like to do this again, maybe. I'm just disappointed. Usually I feel more like, oh, this was so much fun, and it was fine. Just a day of my life. That's a sad way to end this vlog. That isn't really a vlog. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
That's the way the cookie factory crumbles.
As always, hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Goodbye.